Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to disassemble the Kingsong S18 wheel. After my first review I had a lot of comments of people who told me that there are some wheels that have problems with suspension, and I've checked mine. I've deflated the shock and noticed that my suspension doesn't work as it is expected from the factory. It is kinda blocked, and today I have two tasks to do with my wheel. First one is to make the hydro protection of this wheel, to let it ride without any problems on heavy rains, and the second task is of course to deal with the suspension problems and to correct all the issues which doesn't let it work as it is expected and designed from the factory. Let's take a look at the problems I have encountered during the disassembly of this wheel and what I'm going to do with that to fix it and to make the suspension working normally. In my case, good news was that this part which holds the pedals and battery packs was okay. The geometry of it was okay. When I assembled the sliders on the tubes of mainframe with this part and tightened these bolts, I found out that my sliders were working perfectly, so no problem from my side. But when I've done some investigation in the community of owners of this wheel, I found out that some users encounter with bad geometry of this part, and when they tighten these bolts, the sliders became blocked on the tubes they are moving on, so they had to change the geometry. In my case, it wasn't so. Even I've assembled it without these cubes, which had to be removed when I received my wheel, so no problem here. Next thing I would like to talk about is the linkage of the suspension, and the first problem is that the bearings being pressed in their places damage the place where they've been pressed. You may notice here a lot of metal like this, so it's been pressed like in the way it shouldn't be done. And of course it's working like maybe a little bit segmentary, but still okay. But another problem here is that some of the bearings were assembled with those spring washers like this, and of course spring washers damage the sealing of the bearing, and the bearing now requires the replacement because the dirt and water will go in and the bearing will soon be blocked by the rust and stop working. So I will change just some of them. Of course, I've seen some videos that people, not only just videos, and of course the articles that people were changing all of these bearings. I think it is not necessary. Of course, if you would like, you can. This is no problem. So I like to put your attention in these bearings here in this linkage. I think they do not require replacement at all, and they will not be working even if they are brand new. So you can leave it as like this, and of course if it will be blocked by rust or damage to something, so leave it like this. It's not a problem. The main reason they are not working is in this construction of this linkage. So this part is pushing on the bearing here, so yeah, like this here. So there's no problem of rotating these bearings here, but from this side you see that there is a washer, and when you tighten this this fixing part, so it will like block this axle from rotation. So only here it will work. You see this is not moving, and I'm moving just this link. So there is no real reason to change these bearings. It will not work at all. Just leave it like this. Of course, you may say that it won't work okay, but here is like stock installation. You see it's working okay. I will just add some washers here to prevent the inner and outer parts of the bearing friction here, so the moving will be like freely, but even in this configuration it works okay. And frankly speaking, this is not a problem, this is not the main problem of the suspension. Even in this type of the shitty assembly it works okay, and I would give like 1 or 2% of whole suspension blockage to this linkage assembly. So it is not really significant for this wheel. But of course, if you do not put attention to the spring washers, it will be blocked someday and make more impact to the whole suspension work. So the main problem of the suspension blockage is in these parts. When I've assembled these sliders on the tubes and tightened the motor axle with these bolts to the sliders, my suspension became blocked, so I could barely move it with my hands. So it's really obvious that suspension will not work for the smaller bumps. It will just work on the big bumps, like going downstairs or so. The main problem here is that the motor axle is really curvy. It's like the tolerances are made very bad. So I will maybe put some pictures to this video for you to understand what the problem is with the motor axle. Of course, here on this part I found out that there is like a remains of the mold here, so it requires some milling. I will do it of course as well, but in my case I will do it manually by my hands, since I do not have any kind of machinery at home. And for this reason I already did some experiments with that, and I released the blockage of these sliders with the putting of the 0.2 millimeters sheet of metal here, but only just like half of it. So what is the problem when I assemble my wheel? So let me show you. No, not this detail. This is like left part. Yeah, on the left part I put some kind of rigid material here, 0.2 millimeters, and my sliders became to work well. So what happens when I tighten these bolts? This slider is being like moved here in this direction, and the movement is so powerful that it blocks whole suspension from working. So in my case, like putting here some material made it move back and let it work freely. Next thing I would like to talk about is the sealing of the sliders. This sealing, it's done of some rigid materials like plastic. It is installed here, but it is not fixed, so it usually goes away. And of course it is not properly installed or tightened to the tubes, so it's really obvious that the water, sand and dust will go in here, and it will damage the bushings of the slider and of course the tubes. And I think it is really necessary to install the better sealings here. I will do that later. I of course ordered some from AliExpress and will make some custom details here to install better sealings and to put a lot of crease to let this slider moving freely back and forth. Here is my main frame with the tubes for sliders, and that's what I've been talking about. So you see this kind of sealing, it just moves like this. It's not tightened to this tubes, so all the dirt will go in and damage the tubes and the bushings This is quite obvious. So next thing I would like to fix is this trolley handle. I don't know why it's moving like this, but it looks really shitty. Next thing I would like to talk about the water protection here. So Kuji Rolls told us bullshit. It's not IP55 or something like this. Anyway, you shouldn't wash it in your bathroom or go inside the rain, because you see here is the hole, which also has a sponge. Here is the sponge. I'm pointing at like this. So this sponge will get the water, and the water will go inside the beeper, and this might damage the main board. Of course, here is also a big hole for the cables, which is not sealed at all. There is no sealer on the coverage. So of course here is the problem places. Also like this, the bolts which are fixing a main board. Here are the holes of this bolt, so of course there could go the water. So this is really needs to be worked before you could travel across the rains, or like wash it in your bathroom after riding. Next thing I would like to talk about this thermal interface. You see that here is the thermal pad, and here is the thermal paste. So if you are familiar with this kind of technologies of thermal transfer, you may know that when the interfaced surfaces are done very well, so the thermal paste is better for thermal transfer, because it gives you better qualities of this. And the thermal pads are used when the two surfaces are not so very well machined, and this is like a little bit worse than thermal paste, but still okay. And in this case you have two options, which in my opinion will not work as it is designed. So I will remove all the thermal paste and replace the thermal pad with the proper height to make this contact better. And another reason here why you shouldn't wash your wheel in your bathroom or go under the rains, it's here in this window for the light sensor. I think it is really option which is not necessary in this wheel. I don't like it, and I would prefer that there will be no windows here, because here you see it is put some like sealer, but not very good. There are like holes in the center of it, so the main problem might happen that the water will come through this window just on the main board, and you will get it short circuited. And of course there is no sealing at all here. So this is something to be worked on as well before you could wash your wheel or go inside in the rain. So finally I did all the finishing for these defect parts to stop my suspension blockage, and now I will show you how it works with all the tightened bolts here on the motor. So you can see that it works almost perfectly. Almost perfectly is because I think it requires also special lubrication here. I will definitely do that when I receive the ceilings here and the custom details for their installation, and afterwards I think it will start working as designed by the engineers who made the design of this wheel. Anyway, everything I did was with just this tool and my hands, and it took me about 1.5 days to do this. So I had to assemble, do the check it, then disassemble, do the finishing, and then once more assemble, check, and so on, and back and forth. So this is really time consuming job, but anyway, it's possible even with these simple ancient tools like I have. So let me show you what have I done. Of course, in the beginning I planned to install something like spacer here, like for the half of this part, but afterwards I thought that it was not a good idea, so I did some finishing to these parts. Like this here, you see where there is a metal and there's still left some painting or paint. So I did this surface to be smoother. But anyway, this is from the right side. Right side, like when you step on your unicycle. This is slider from right side, and for the right side I didn't do so much. A lot of work was done for the left side. Here is the slider for the left side. You can see that much more metal was removed from here, like finishing was done a little bit more for this part, and the main pain in the ass was the axle or shaft maybe. You may see that here it is shining. Let me show you. Yeah, this one is shining. If we rotate it like this, you can see that it is black. So a lot of metal was removed from here by my hand. It was like this 0.2 millimeter from this side, and you may see here is a spot with the black color which is left from the original. So I did a lot of removal of metal here, but just a little bit here to make it like with the proper surface. I will put a picture here for you to understand what was my problem with this shaft. So it is really time consuming and really the big problem of this wheel, because when you tighten it, because of this bad surface which was like defect from the factory, it like makes sliders move like this, and of course the suspension is being blocked. Just a little tip on quality of bearings. Kingsong used an S18 wheel. This is stock 6203 RS, so it just spins like a spinner. So the sealing here is really bad. It won't protect the bearing from water or small particles of sand. So this is from Gateway MCM5 6203 2RS. Feel the difference. So it doesn't spin like that one. And of course here I will install this. This is much better bearing, but this what comes from the wheel is not a bearing. This is a fucking spinner for retards. You should never ride in the rain with this bearing, or it will get rusty and will be destroyed. So I've done the water protection for my wheels motor, and one more thing I would like to pay you attention for is that the winding of the motor is not done accurately as I expected it should be. So the winding here is not so accurate. Also it has some kind of strange things, like here is the bundle of the wires coming from the winding like this, and of course there are some single wires coming like this from the whole bundle. I don't see any reason to do like this. This is really strange, and that's something I really don't like, and I think it shouldn't be done in this way. Some of you may say in comments that you are paying too much attention to the quality of the Kingsong, and of course you can ride with all this stuff with any problems, and this is not really significant. Yeah, I agree with that. You can ride with this kind of inaccurate winding and it will be okay for the whole life of this wheel, but in Russian community there is some kind of conviction that Kingsong has much better quality than the Gateway or Bigodi, and frankly speaking, I don't see that much quality in comparison, for example, with my MCM5, because all the details which I'm taking care of in Kingsong have defects or some kind of inaccuracy, and even in some things like the bearings I showed you in Bigodi or Gateway are much better, although they are not brand like this SKF, but they are still better than those are installed in this motor. So I've done the waterproofing of the motor with the special lacquer for electric circuitry. It was poured inside the winding, so this gives the waterproofing to the stator, as well as gives the rigidity for the winding wires. Because of this inaccuracy, they can vibrate, and the lacquer will hold them tightly to the stator. Also, I did the same procedure with the magnets. I also covered them with the lacquer, and I also created a special gasket from the sealing compound. So I will put the link in the description to this video how to create this. As an example, there will be an electric scooter motor. Although it's in Russian, you anyway will understand the procedure how to do this. This is the best solution, in my opinion, if you want to open up your motor a little bit later, so it doesn't give you any problems with disassembling the wheel cover, and also it protects the motor from the water and all the bad things which come from inside. Also, I covered with the lacquer all this surface of this cover for the motor, because sometimes some water or special reagents which I used in Russia to fight with the snow and ice on the streets come through the bearings and make here some kind of corrosion even for the aluminum. So I prefer to cover it with the lacquer to protect this part of the cover from all the corrosion might happen. So now I will install the new bearings and assemble my motor, and will continue my work on the wheel. Next stage is to make the hydro protection of this main board, but before they applying special compound to this board, I want to desolder this beeper from the main board, because there are known problems with that when the water gets in. I already shown you the big hole in the frame where the water comes from, right in this beeper, and it was blown away for some users. So I've already marked the plus leg of this beeper with this paint. So once I will desolder it, I will solder it on these wires with this connector, and the plan is to glue beeper somewhere here on this upper cover of the wheel. So when I will disassemble the wheel once again, I will just disconnect this connector and then do some maintenance or what is needed for the wheel. And the big hole in the frame will be covered with sealer, so no water or dirt will go inside the frame and here on the main board. Of course, an interesting thing is that the main board is covered a little bit with special lacquer to make the waterproofing of it, but it's done like just partly, because when there are some elements soldered on the board, there is a lacquer, but where there is no elements, there is no lacquer here. And the same thing is on this side. So here we can see it is covered with lacquer here and nothing is here. So in my opinion, this is bad type of protection, because if you do this, you should cover all the board to avoid any failures of covering some hidden parts of this board or something like this. That's the reason I think when people get problems with the main board burned due to the water leakage inside it. So now the connector is being soldered here, and all I have to do is to put the special compound on this board to protect it from the water, but I will stop somewhere, maybe here, because there are LEDs for the stop and signal lights, so I will cover them just by the lacquer, which is transparent. So I will let these LEDs be bright, because the compound is not the transparent one, it's white like this sealer. So after the procedure is done, the main board looks like this. So it is important to take care of the power button not to let the compound get in. Also, I didn't care about the LEDs as much because my tape was unglued by itself. So when my compound was like going here, I was just taking it off mechanically, and now my LEDs here are free of this compound, but here it is a lot of compound on this side. So in the end of the procedure, I will just put a little bit of lacquer here to prevent any short circuit from the water, to make sure that it is very well covered, because the lacquer doesn't have any color, so it will be transparent for the lights. So from this side it looks like this. All the elements are covered, even if there are no elements on the board. This part of circuit board is also covered. All I left is this transistors to let it be connected to thermal transfer interface to the main frame, so it has to be clean here, but here everything is covered with this compound. Also, you might notice that I covered all the connectors, because that's the real problem. The compound goes in if you don't cover it, and you will have a problem with contacts there. And one more problem I had with this board is this connector. Although I didn't put there directly the compound, but it get in from outside, because this connector is not fully sealed from outside and inside, and of course the compound gets in, and I had to clean it up with this type of instruments, needles, pins, toothpickers, and so on. So like this. Now it just works. I already tested it with my tester, so this is the thing of importance to take care of. That's it. So now my main board is fully protected from all the water. I can ride within the rain, even the heavy rain, without any problems, and without taking care of my main board will be short circuited. Next thing I've done, I've disassembled the light of the wheel, and I've made it hydro protection for that. But firstly, I've started with this kind of the filter for light. This is like a mask here. You can see it. It's done from the metallized tape. So I've put it here because the S18 slide, when you are going with high beam and low beam, it really blinds the people and drivers. So this is a well-known improvement of the light in the Russian community of S18 owners to prevent the blinding of the people. So next thing here is the board of the light. So you see here LEDs and the components. So I've put it almost the whole board with the lacquer with several times, and the only places I left is here and here. This is needed for the thermal paste, which helps to transfer heat to the main frame of the wheel. But here also everything is covered with the lacquer, and also like these contacts, and also the holes there are also closed with the lacquer inside, but in the way to prevent the coverage of these contacts. So now I'm sure that if even the moisture or water will go inside, nothing will happen to this board, and it will continue to work as expected. So next part is the main frame. So you may see that I've covered here everything with the sealant, because there are some kind of holes between this light assembly and the main frame, so the dirt and dust can go inside. So I prevented this by closing those holes, and I also put some sealant here as well, so to have 100% guarantee that nothing will go inside this lamp. And the next thing I've done is that I've covered with a sealant this hole for the speaker, so nothing also can go from outside here where the circuit board is located. So for now that's all, and I'm going to clean this thermal paste and assemble the headlight as it is had to be done from the factory. Next thing I will do with the suspension is the improvement of the linkage. So I will replace these bearings here, because as I said before, those bearings are still okay for me in my opinion, and I will replace only that ones because the spring washers which were installed here, they've damaged the sealing of the bearings, so they will require the replacement. And also I will clean up this space from the metal remains. And of course here are my new bearings. It's brand from ISB. I hope they will work for quite long time. I will use this tool for press out, and also this washer, which is perfectly fits right here.
You now chilling with the motherfucking crew.
So now I've finished one link with removal and installation of new bearing, pressing it off and pressing it on again. And I must say that this is also a time-consuming process, because here there are a lot of metal burrs, so I had to remove that to work with that surface. Otherwise the new bearing is going to be skewed during the pressing into process, and it will be damaged. So I already damaged one of the bearings, so now the surface has been worked and it looks much better than from the factory. I was really surprised that I saw a paint there in that hole for the bearing, because in my opinion there are some problems with tolerances here. I don't think that this hole was made with the tolerance to be with the paint. So I think that's the reason why burrs occur when the Kingsong employees pressed in these bearings, because the tolerances were like not the ones that were initially created. So I don't know why they did some painting inside. I think it's not needed. So you can see where I had been working with that surface, there is no paint at all. Also I had some minor scratches here, but I don't think it's a problem. Maybe I will repaint these links, or maybe I will leave it like this. We'll see. Anyway, right now I will reassemble this link with new bearing, and then can continue assembly of my wheels suspension. So the process is done, the bearing is in its place, and you might see how easy it got there, because before that it was the problem to install it, since it was always skewed during the pressing in, due to the bad tolerances here. I guess the problem is that this hole was painted, and that was the main reason that some bearings are broken, and some of them are working segmentary, but now it's okay. So anyway, if you will have to change all other bearings, this is something to work on, the inner surface of these holes, to make the bearings installation much better. Also, as you might notice, I've used the old bearing as the help to install it. So while it didn't go down in this hole, I used the bearings, then I used just this washer to put it in place. I will continue my links assembly with the help of the washers, because here it requires to be installed, since the outer cage of bearings are in contact with the other one, so it's not the best way to work of this part of the mechanism. So I will install it here to let it work freely. These are the washers 10 to 12 to 0.1 millimeter. Also I have these washers. Those dimensions are 10 to 13 to 1 millimeter. I will use it here instead of spring washers, which were installed from the factory, and maybe here, or maybe 0.1 millimeter thickness. I don't know. I will see in the process of my assembly which ones are much better to install. So I have reassembled my links with the spacers. I had to use two of them. I already did another reassembly, but without recording it on the video to save you and my time. But anyway, it required two of them because there were some contacts of these two parts of links when I tightened this joint very well. So with two it works fine. Now it's okay. It rotates really easy, but anyway, of course, I agree that I had to change bearings here. I will do that after first season of riding. I am really curious what will happen with the stock bearings in these links. Anyway, after the first season, I will do the maintenance for the suspension, so I will change these bearings here. And now I will reassemble the second links joint with the washers, and then continue to assemble my wheel further. So I have disassembled the trolley handle. It's done really easy. You have to unscrew these two screws and then pull it out, and then it is disassembled. I fixed the problem of rigidity of my trolley handle tip with the insulation tape. I just put it with some layers here. Of course, I do understand that this is not the best way to fix this up, but since the disassembly is done really easy and it can be done on the fully assembled wheel, I don't care if it will be worn away during some time, and I will replace it without any problems. Also, I have added a lot of lubrication there on these tubes and inside the mechanism, which pushes on the locks of this trolley handle. And also I have added plugs here to these tubes. I think it is necessary because there is a mechanism of trolley handle inside it, and if the sand will go inside, for example, if you will fall on your left or right side on the sandy road, it will obviously go inside and it can damage and lock the mechanism. So I think it is really important to have such plugs. I have created them from these plugs from wine bottles. Of course, this is also not the best solution, and I will look for a better one, but for the first time it will do its job well. And yeah, I will leave it for now like this. And for these tubes it is not necessary because there is no moving parts inside of it, so I will leave it without any plugs. Finally, I've got my custom details for oil seals installation. So here how it will look like. So here is the slider. The custom detail will be installed here. It has to be pressed in here, and as well I will use the red thread locker while pressing it in, and that's how it will be holded here. The tolerances here are very hard. So speaking about the construction of this detail, it has like an internal space here for this oil seal. It is 26 on 32 on 4. It has been ordered from AliExpress, and I had to work with it a little bit to cut off a little bit of this side, the outer one, and then install it inside. So that's how it looks like with installed seals. So it works greatly. I will show you right now the video which I already recorded for some other guys who also wanted such custom details, and I created a special batch of these details for them, and before sending, of course, I've sent them a video of how it works. So I have installed one oil seal on the tube to show you how it works. I also put some consistent lube on the tube. So now I will move it and you will see how it gathers the lube and cleans up the tube. So where I have moved it, you see that there are some remains of the assembled lube, and the rest of the tube is shine and clean. Of course I have it like moving like this because it is not installed in slider, but anyway it still works okay. I'm very satisfied with the result. You see that the tube is really clean where it was moving. So here is the result of its work. Works great. So now I consider that the problem of dirt getting into these sliders and damaging the bushings and the tubes is gone absolutely, because these seals will lock everything from outside, and before the assembling I will put a lot of the consistent lube there, so it will also help to work these sliders more smoothly. Some of you may say that it will be better to pour there some like motor oil lube or something like this, but I prefer the consistent because I'm not sure if these seals will work with something like motor oil, since they are custom made, since they had been cut a little bit. But with the consistent it will work well. I already tried it, as you might seen, and I'm very satisfied how it works. So this is the way to go for me. During the process of wheel assembly I decided to improve the pedal fixation mechanism, which keeps the pedals fixed in a retracted position, because there is a well-known issue that this part of the pedal cracks, or this small part cracks, and pedal will no longer hold in this position. So I have added magnets here on the pedal, just glued them in, and of course on the other side of this cover I also glued some magnets, and I will put it like this. So I hope when or if my mechanism will crack, the magnets will do the job of holding the pedals fixed. Retracted this is done in Gateway or Bigade. Finally, I managed my wheel to be assembled back to life, so now it's ready to go on the road, and the project took me a lot of time. It was all the winter that it was disassembled, and I've been working on it. This is because of these custom details, like these bushings and the sealers inside. It took me a long time to find the proper sealings, because the size of the tubes is like the rare one, so you wouldn't find these sealers in each shop. The next thing I encountered with is that the bushings, so I had to find a turner who would do this job for me for these bushings and this detail which holds the axle to the slider, because not all of the people are ready to do such a work, and this is really the problem to find them. But yeah, finally I managed that, and now the suspension is working fine. Although I spent quite a lot of time for that, I am very satisfied with my project, since it's working very smoothly. Right now I will add a video which was recorded during the assembly and shows you how the suspension is working when it's assembled. Just this main frame and the motor and the mainframe goes down under its weight. It's really light, if you know that. So this is a really great result, and of course when I installed the batteries, the wheel began to fall down under its weight. It's also very great, and I'm very satisfied with that. I think my suspension will work much better. Also, I would like to say that during my work on this wheel, almost at the end of this project, I found out that Echo Drift and Kingsong agreed to send me the new motor under the warranty coverage, because the old one I showed you had a very bad axle, which made the problem of suspension work. It literally blocked it. So I will soon get my new motor and replace it, because yeah, I did some milling to the axle, and I'm a little bit nervous on that. There is less material and it can crack, maybe during the ride over the stairs, or drops from higher border stones. Anyway, what I would like to say, thanks to Kingsong, thanks to my dealer Echo Drift, they work very well, and this is a very cool feature that they agreed to send me a new motor. Of course, if you will buy such a wheel and you will have some kind of problems with that, feel free to contact warranty service of your dealer. They will definitely help you. Although I had a lot of problems with the suspension alignment, I heard that new batches are coming much better with the spacers and stuff like this, and the axles are now aligned properly, so it doesn't require so much work to do as I had to. And I don't know about your dealer, but for example in Russia, Echo Drift does a special work for extra fee, which is called before sale maintenance, and of course they reassemble on all the suspension and make sure that it works fine. So if you have such kind of service from your dealer, of course order it. It's not that expensive, but if you will have some problems with your suspension, it takes a lot of effort and time to align it, because in this case any of misalignments or bad tolerances you may cause will block the suspension, and you won't get any benefits from it as you might expect from the suspension wheel. So that's all for today. If you like my video, please subscribe and like it. Of course I will try to record a new video on how the suspension works on the bumps. I will think about it, how to put on the camera to show you the movements of this mechanism, so you may understand what's the difference with working with bushings and sealers or without them. And of course I will give some feedback on the suspension performance, what has changed after this project implementation, whether it becomes smoother or not. And in the nearest future, after this riding season will come to the end, I plan to disassemble this wheel and show you what has happened with the bushings, with the tubes, with the loop inside of these bushings, what's happened with the bearings in the linkage.